Hello there, and welcome to What I Wish I Knew at 30. Today, I have a very dear friend of mine, the amazing Sarah Green. With a background in professional theatre, Sarah's ambition is to bring everything to life. Sarah designs and delivers trainings from concept through delivery in any chosen medium or format, and specializes in scenario-based learning and in connecting people through conversations that boost connection, productivity, and navigate strategy, all the things that create great relationships. Sarah's passion, not just for the theatre, but also for NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, helps her unlock people's learning potential, and her agile and scrum training ensures that the trainings being delivered and created are results-driven and evidence-based. Sarah is also the founder of Avatar Jo Roleplay training and often presents at universities and corporate events. Sarah, is there anything that you would like to add to the introduction?
Well, I think that's a really, really good introduction. As you know, I've crammed quite a lot of things in my life, and right now the pot of my experiences is very much directed towards supporting other people having, great conversations. So that's a really lovely summary. Thank you.
I love that. And I'm really looking forward to having a great conversation with you today. I know my core values and one of my highest values is positive connection and communication. And I know that we definitely gravitate on that level. So I'm really excited today to have you on the show. We're going to dive. Oh,
Thank you for
sorry. Of course. We're going to dive into the hard-earned lessons, the mistakes that turned into gold, and the wisdom we all wish we knew and that we had at 30. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get into it. So Sarah, welcome to the show. Let's start with this. Imagine we're jumping into a time machine right now. You're 30 years old again.
Yeah.
Where are you? What are you doing? And what's going through your mind at that stage of life?
Okay. Well, I'm a new mum and I've just started running a theatre company, and I am in a relationship and living in Torquay in Devon, and very passionate about sort of using my theatre skills for bringing learning to life for lots of different people. And kind of as usual, cramming lots of things in. And burning the candle at both ends of life, not necessarily socially, but, being a parent and like trying to make things happen and all of those kinds of things. So
all of those kinds of things.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you feel that you had life figured out at 30, or were you just winging it at that stage?
Oh, a great question. So I've reflected on this question. So I know that I looked at some of them before, but not all of them. And I realized that actually winging it is probably my preferred mode of operation. So yes, I was definitely winging it in my head. You don't think you're winging it. You think you've got this really clear idea of what you're making happen. And then, life happens back at you and you adjust and respond. Yes, definitely winging it. Obviously parenting is winging it, but also life, because it's it's always improvised. Every day is improvised. You've never done the day before. That I kind of like that feeling of not being quite prepared.
But within a really structured environment, because I love the way you say that actually, when you really look at what you do, you improvise, but within a structure, results-based, outcome-driven. Would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely. So the structure in my head that I have acquired over time is very much so, and I'm sure we'll come to this in the conversation, it's about getting needs met, isn't it? That's what life's about. And if you don't understand your needs, you can't get them met. And so at 30, I think probably you're not very good at getting your own needs met. And you tend to get better at that as you get older. One of the, going back, what would I say to myself at 30 is, what do you really, really want? What do you need? And are you getting it? And are you prioritizing other people's needs over yours? And I think overwhelmingly for many women of our generation, the answer would be yes, yes, and yes to everybody else. And so the question around, what would I change? I don't know, because I'm not that keen on regret.
I agree. I agree.
So I think, looking back philosophically, it always makes you quite emotional, doesn't it? Because you kind of
Mm,
want to nurture the person
mm,
that you go back to. So one of the questions I would ask myself at 30 is, what would I say to my 8-year-old self?
mm, mm.
Because generally that's kind of where you're formed, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. And you're absolutely right. Before you understand what your actual needs are, I think everyone is very good at, saying what they don't want,
Yes. Yeah.
but actually flipping that script and creating we have our basic human needs, but you're right, as women, we're not always very good at identifying those, being aware of them, and then actually planning our life fit into them. And in fact, even being able to say what we truly want, there's often a difficulty around that as a female, because we are very good at abandoning self to be able to work with everybody else's needs and wants.
Absolutely. There is and the perception of the emancipation of women in terms of career and family life is very much an illusion of freedom. Because actually you end up with less, because you've got more on your plate with less support. So
I'm hearing you.
sorry, Fran, I probably came. So yeah, there is that kind of appetite to prove your worth in so many multiple areas that you
Mm.
end up reducing your own freedom in ever decreasing circles, and abandoning some of those pressures or desires at 30 can actually also be liberating, but probably only come as past 45.
Well, and the whole purpose of this podcast is actually to share even a little bit of wisdom, a few nuggets,
Yeah.
to the younger generation, to maybe, not take on that self-abandonment, and to actually really start to reflect and be aware of our own needs. Because when we're following someone else's needs and values, we're not being true to ourselves. And I think the longer, and it's kind of describe it, that the longer we stay in that trajectory, the harder it is to come back to who we are. The easier it is to completely lose ourselves in the service of others, which I think in some ways is a good thing, as long as it's within our balance of life and we're meeting our own needs first.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my career as a theatre director allowed me to observe every character in every story with that
Nice.
perspective, in a way. It's just,
Mm.
what do they want and how are they trying to get it? And what makes great drama is people not getting their needs met at all. So if everybody was very sort of, grown up and mature and kind of, oh, that's very nice and considerate, it doesn't make good drama. So so I started to witness things and observe those behaviors in, fictional characters. And then you start to think, okay, how am I functioning? What's my story?
Mm.
And how am I getting my needs met? So in some ways, I've been ridiculously successful in doing that, because I won't die wondering mostly what life is like, because I've given it a good, really good go. And my dad and I actually wrote a screenplay on holiday once, I don't know, called Don't Die Wondering. So I think if that was going to be you know, my epitaph, it would be that she didn't die wondering.
Amazing. I love that. Well, I hope that comes to life one day. As somebody who wants to, bring everything to life, that sounds like a great opportunity to spend some time looking at that.
Completely.
Going back to when you were 30, what was your biggest dream at that time? And, ultimately, did life take you where you expected?
Did life take me where I expected? I So my biggest dream would have been to have the resources that I need to represent what was in my head. And I still think that is something
Yeah.
that is definitely um, a dream, in the sense, because it comes with a certain freedom of letting what surfaces in your imagination and in your emotions out on the world, which is why art is so important, and why I love working with actors, is because they have the freedom to
Mm,
demonstrate behaviors that so many people don't feel comfortable doing so. So, yeah, my biggest dream, and it still is to be well resourced enough to exercise what's in my head and my heart without fear.
Nice. I like that. I like that. What would you say is perhaps your biggest fear of that not being achieved?
Well, I don't know if I have a fear about it. It's sort of inevitably not going to be achieved because with every release of creativity, if something else comes up that's more extravagant or more trivial or, more connected to the kind of the free spirit that we all have that wants to be emotionally and creatively messy. So I would really love to. It's a bit like going to a really, really good festival, isn't it? Where you're kind of dancing around and suddenly the idea of being naked or crying or hugging or dancing all seems perfectly normal. And it is. But we've done so much effort trying to mold ourselves into meeting the expectations of others that I think my only regret would be not to have more of those moments.
Mm.
And in a way, it's probably why festivals are so popular these days, because it's a mini society where the version of ourselves that we like the most gets to do more of the things that it likes to do.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky enough to live somewhere where it's a bit like a mini festival all year, where the arts and being eccentric and expressing yourself is part of the local culture. But I wouldn't mind turning it up several notches.
So naked swimming, here it comes.
Well, actually, I went last night. So
Fantastic. I love it.
it suddenly dawns on you when you're stood on the edge of the water and it's pitch black. Why are you
Mm.
putting a bathing costume on? Like,
Yeah.
who's going to
That
see?
you're going to get wet and have to take back off.
Yes,
I agree with
exactly.
you.
So why are you putting it on? Now you're putting it on just in case somebody accidentally, because obviously when you're, especially at night, if you're naked, you kind of glow a bit, don't you? Because the light's coming from the shore. But then I thought, well, then what's going to happen?
Exactly.
Exactly. So it's a lovely feeling. So yeah,
It's
I'm
definitely a
for,
liberating feeling,
yeah,
isn't it?
completely swim naked in life. That's just go for it.
I love that. It's going to be your tagline, Sarah. So looking back now,
Yeah.
what's something that you were completely wrong about at 30?
That I needed to try to like people that I got into relationships with.
Okay, you're going to have to expand that one.
Well, kind of. So in romantic relationships, obviously, there's always compromise. But I think the level of effort I was prepared to put in was beyond what was going to make me happy. Like if it's good, it's good, isn't it?
Mm.
And I think that generally in life, and especially like after the journeys that you and I have been on with health, the idea of tolerating any body or thing that
Mm.
doesn't make you feel good is just like, nah, off you go. Thanks, bye.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so at 30, think that I was just wrong, because you're wrong about so many things because you think you're right. It's kind of an inevitability, isn't it? Like the more you think you're right, the more likely you are to be wrong. You've disappeared, Fran. I think this is a fluff moment. I'm just checking to see if it's me, Fran. I don't think it is.
Sorry about that. You were carrying on talking to yourself. I really apologise.
It's the best conversation I have in any day.
Oh, I thought we were doing quite well.
Yes, we were. No.
That's very funny.
Because remote working, you just end up talking to yourself a lot more, don't you? And
Yeah.
then when you go into a room of people, I'm not even sure whether I have spoken to myself. You have a thought and you're so used to verbalizing them
Yeah.
in a remote place. So no, that wasn't a reflection on our conversation.
So where were we? We were talking about the things that
That were
you got.
wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess it comes back to meeting needs, doesn't it? Really, is that your perception on the things you're so sure about tend to be things you become softer as you grow older. So
I
you
think
see
that's true.
different perspectives, and I think that's when the sort of NLP training kind of nudged me into that space, after running the theatre company. And then I got involved in training doctors and watching them have conversations as a theatre director. I was like, oh my God, they're never going to get this done. Just like you see one after the other get up and do patient consultations, and you're just like, this is going nowhere. No wonder you can't
Mm,
get an appointment. And then I thought, okay, so how do I unpick this? How do I equip myself with
mm,
ways to navigate this? So then that's when I kind of studied NLP a bit, and then suddenly the map of conversations sort of reveals itself like on a floor, so you can step
mm,
in different angles and see things. And I think at that age, and often at 30, you look at your parents very differently, and you go through a process of loving them, accepting them, and blaming them
mm.
in very quick succession,
Yeah.
because you can see the pattern.
And then what I love about NLP is that very first time you walk into someone teaching cause and effect.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, all of those things, all of those perceptions, everything that you thought could never change because it's just the way it is and it's because of this or because of that, you suddenly go, oh, hell, this is actually all my responsibility. And now, am I at cause or am I at the effect of something? And if I'm at the effect of something, how am I going to change that?
Yep.
Because whose responsibility is it? I love that. And it hit me right between the eyes. My life fundamentally changed at that point.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah. And I think part of the challenge in coaching is holding space for people to receive that information, but then take it away and process it
Mm.
rather than demand acknowledgement, because it's such a big
Yep.
shift.
Yep.
And often I find when I'm training is that clients will perceive the idea that a certain amount of knowledge or information is going to get this result. And yes, maybe. And yes, there may be some acknowledgement of how powerful things are in the room. But the main result is the processing of information with enough empowerment to facilitate individual
Yep.
change. Um, so balancing expectations of what training should be is blah, 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 a bit like teaching, in
Mm.
school. It's not about the volume or the quantity. It's about the quality of human connection between you as the trainer and the people who are learning with you, but also in the room. Because without that psychological safety to allow change to happen and to be resisted, then inevitably nothing will
Mm.
change at all. And that description is both external and internal, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And it's about, when you're training, when you're coaching, creating that, first of all, that awareness, because without awareness, nothing changes.
Mhm.
And then allowing that process. And as we all know, people operate at very different levels, different perceptions, different ways of even receiving information.
Mhm.
So all of that, once that awareness is created, becomes a work in progress, doesn't it?
Completely. And then also the task of change can also become inadvertently a sort of another burden, another kind of meeting and, kind of over delivering on meeting a need, as opposed to accepting the fact that you only need to help yourself to the point at which you're laughing and smiling.
Yeah, that's nice. I like that.
And once you're laughing and smiling, just stop trying, like,
Yeah.
don't say anything.
This will do for a minute until you
Yeah,
process the next bit.
absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's otherwise it can become something that makes you miserable, is trying
Yeah.
to get something that you
Yeah.
don't need. So
Well, and forced change isn't beneficial for anybody, is it?
no,
No.
absolutely not.
So, Sarah, they say life is the best teacher,
Yes.
and sometimes those lessons come wrapped in disaster. So
Yes.
let's just talk quickly about the biggest curveballs that life has thrown at you, whether it was in business or relationships or personal growth.
Sure.
What's one experience, and I'm sure we'll have more than one, but what's one experience that at the time felt absolutely terrible, but actually probably really ended up in the end shaping you?
Sure. So this is where there's a really obvious one to me, but I was thinking about this earlier. Sorry. Do you want to I was thinking about this earlier, and I was like, "Oh, there's a real like." I suddenly felt really vulnerable, and I was asking myself, "Why do I feel vulnerable at answering this question?" One, because those moments in your life you tend to suffer a bit and struggle a bit, and you're worried about the emotional kind of taking the lid off things, but also because I know you so well and I know you as such a safe person to talk to. I was like, oh, there's a danger here. This is, it's not danger, but I was like, I could just go for it, and then this is being broadcast. So without a doubt, having ME, chronic fatigue syndrome, was like instantly you can hear my voice. It's like, hits you really here. So many people will know if they've had long COVID or ME that you're just, you're grounded. And when you're grounded and you're used to being busy, there's a whole bunch of stuff you've got time to think. So yes, it was, of course, any kind of chronic, any illness that stops you is keeping you alive. Right? It's stopping you from dying. And that's something that's really important to know, is that your body is doing what it's doing, because otherwise you would die. So sitting still and thinking does give you, a lot of time. I think the struggle with it, just like life, is you don't know if it's going to end or whether you'll recover. Luckily, I'm fully recovered, as you know.
Glad to hear.
And that in itself is a journey, because you're trying everything. You don't know, mostly the answer's no, that doesn't work. So I think my resilience from previous life experiences, of which there are many, would have stood me in good stead, which is why I have recovered. That resilience can also be a level of strength that comes with its own sort of payback, if you like. It comes with its own drain on your energy. So you have to really, really let go. And then in the middle of that, obviously, I had cancer, and that was another challenge. But out of the two, I would say the ME was far harder, far more challenging. So what did it do? Well, I have a little sticker to my right on the wall here that says, comfortable being slow, So there have been various moments in my life since, in business, where things have got really complicated, incredibly stressful. During COVID, I had a contract with the NHS, and that was really hard, because you're balancing the world changing, business everybody's trying to do the right thing. And I overcommitted and got into some, quite serious financial difficulty. And the wear and tear of that was huge. But I just thought, actually, I just have to go slow. Not faster, but slower, because the best way to fix anything is to be well.
In fact, it's the only way, isn't it?
The only way.
Yeah.
So that in itself is, when I kind of go, I live very close to the beach. So when I go, the tide's right, the surf's right, it's like, just go.
Yeah.
And there are certain, family commitments that you have in life that you don't really want to turn around and say, I wasn't there, or, I didn't do the right thing. So you have to, did it teach me loads? It must have, because I sat there, I had so much time to think and acquire some good better habits. So that was without a doubt, that's the biggest life, event that has changed the course of how I live better for myself and others. So, I don't know what the core lesson would be, but to get better, I had to remove everything from my life, every person and every activity, which can be I say it's difficult for other people. It can be a bit of a shock to other people.
Yeah. But ultimately, if we don't look after ourselves, as we both know, there's a consequence. And I can remember when I first went into my cancer journey, and we were talking on the phone, obviously, because I was in Australia and you were here. And you said some words to me that I still chuckle about now. And you said to me, you need to learn to channel your inner sloth. And I thought that was just beautiful. And when I'm running around like a lunatic, and I had to channel my inner sloth for those 3 years of cancer and chemo. But you were very inspirational to me. That line came, and it was on my phone for a while on my front page, so that when because it's really important. As women, we don't often channel our inner sloth, and we don't understand that resting is an active part of life. And when we don't do that, the consequences of not doing that are going to hit you at some point. And maybe that's the core lesson from that.
Yeah, absolutely. That you can. So, I see people now working when they're not well, because they think they can't afford to stop working. And it's absolutely. I mean, it's absolutely not true, because you will find a way to survive. You will find a way to eat. You will find, and if
Yeah.
you have to sell your house or your car or whatever,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
will find a way. And I think, like, the movie, the Salt Path is another
Mm.
example. Regardless of its questioned efficacy, it's still, you do find a way, and people find
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
when you are, when you think you don't have people.
Yeah.
You sit somewhere quietly and somebody will talk to you, and you'll have a new perspective on life. So just pushing through. You have to do it often. We all do it, is still every
Yeah.
day. But generally, when your body's screaming at you or life's screaming at you, you can just stop and remove yourself,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it will sort itself out.
Yeah, it will. And I think if you don't listen to that, you ignore it at your peril.
Yeah, well, you ignore it, and I mean, if you're not around as long as you hope, then that's just what it is.
Yeah,
We're all going to be compost in the end, aren't we?
I suppose we are. So, Sarah, if you could go back and whisper advice to yourself
Yes.
in that moment during that time, what would you say now?
What would I say now? I would say, Sarah, you're smarter than you think, and you don't have to do things with so little resources. So you can get better resource. And I would also say, which I think I would find funny at 30, is, by the way, you become a university lecturer, which I would have found ridiculous. As somebody, my only qualification is a cycling proficiency badge. Literally, I have no, I flunked school.
I love it.
I have no, no formal qualifications in anything at all, and yet I can go into the School of Chemistry at the highest ranking university in the UK and teach them how to have a conversation and
I
get
love that.
100% approval by all the attendees that they have taken something away of value. And so, if I knew that then, I mean, maybe I can do that because of each struggle and each level of curiosity.
Yeah.
Um, the limitations that we put, I can't do this because I'm not qualified. I can't do that because I'm not qualified. It's just a piece of paper and an approval by a bunch of humans who decided they had the well, I don't know what the right to approve you, but they don't. It's only a
No,
it's
no.
only a process and a piece of paper. So just to give yourself a certificate every day if you want
Yeah.
one.
Certified to live life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Certified to do anything, certified, obviously there are certain levels of skill in some really high stakes
Yeah.
situations where you want an external body to tell you you're good at it. But 9 times out of 10, you can become very good at most things just without
I
somebody approving.
love that. That's so powerful. And it kind of leads on to my next question, because do you think young professionals and entrepreneurs today struggle with the same things we did? Or do you think they're facing a completely different world?
I think by and large they struggle with the same things
Mm.
that we did. I think that potentially there's lots more mis-selling
Mm.
of what's achievable because of the amount of advertising exposure to the internet and
Yeah.
all of those kinds of things. The idea that you just do this and you just do that, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
If you're a startup entrepreneur, this whole macho concept of unicorns,
Yeah. No, go.
fast growing businesses is so kind of retro in many ways, because it's all the data's there that any business that grows exponentially and becomes worth millions, the quicker they do it, the quicker they leave, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And what's the point? What's the point of all that struggle? If your goal is just to like be the best, whatever, that's fine. But is it really? I don't know.
Mm.
Because is your aspiration, if you look at the people who are considered successful, then none of them I don't see many of them laughing that much or having great relationships or not being medicated. So you're just like, well,
Yeah.
the people that you never meet that are smiling, they should be your heroes. And if you can create your business or get your dreams met without the need of approval for others, and you're still not, you have that balance. So I think I measure success very differently to lots of people, but the sort of startup world and the business world is about domination and control, and it's about exploitation. And I don't see that many people really enjoying that. at the end of the day. There's a few people that kind of master it. So think about the joy that you want in your life and how the business will deliver that, rather than proving to the world that you can become exceptionally wealthy.
Mm. Mm.
But, I mean, that's just me, and I'm not wealthy. So if that's your goal, then, but I'm rich in culture and friendships and
Yeah.
the physical beauty of my, my own environment. So, the rest to me is just admin.
Yeah, exactly. Moving on from there, I mean, what's one mindset shift that completely changed your approach to success?
One mindset. So the first thing that came into my mind was
Mm.
gratitude.
Mm.
And so I think just being grateful for all the things I have certainly helps. The other mindset shifts that happen, they mostly happen when you're training other people,
Mm.
I find,
Mm.
because I mean, this is, you say about, are you just wing it? I wing every single training session because
Mm.
it's I need to be present and I need to
Yeah,
react to the people that are in the room. And so sometimes you look at your audience and you know the words that you had prepared are not going to
gonna work. Yeah.
resonate. And so when you have to reframe things or pull people into the room to express their feelings or their resistance or their opinions, something processes in your mind where you step into another perspective. And so I think my mindset shift really has been to savor that as a skill and
Mm.
choose to use it, rather than potentially that bit of frustration that sits between the middle of the frustration you have of trying to be understood and the frustration you have of trying to understand. It kind of sits somewhere in the middle where you want to share something and you're navigating that space to commune over something that's going to add value to
Yeah.
people's conversations. And going back to the entrepreneurs or people in current society, we are living in a time where speaking your mind is being restricted, and therefore people will lose the skill to
Mm.
speak their mind. And if you lose the skill
Mm.
to speak your mind, then you are suffering, in some way,
Yeah,
because you
by
need to,
default.
by default. So creating finding safety in how you communicate
Mm.
and helping people find it is something that is the only thing that can liberate workplaces or success,
Yeah.
because otherwise
Yeah.
you're not getting all the information. The same in any relationship. I guess my mindset shift is there's a lid of kind of stand sideways, let it flow. If people aren't going to go
Yeah.
there, that's fine. But also to really appreciate the fact that I have that, skill over tens of thousands of hours of directing and coaching,
Mm. Mm.
that I can just trust what comes into my head, and generally it
Yeah.
works.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I think the greatest gift there that you give others that you're working with is that you're not taking over that conversation. You're not guiding it in the way that you think it should be. You're allowing it to flow. You're allowing that team to find their natural rhythm,
Yeah.
which is obviously going to benefit them when they take that back into the workplace because they've had that interaction in a guided way or but not in a way that says this is what you should do. And I think that's incredible because so many coaches go into that should mode. This is what you should do. And none of us have walked in anyone else's
Yeah.
shoes.
Absolutely. And every now and again, you do find that you are kind of edging towards that space,
Mm.
because you can find that little frustration and going, "Oh, this has worked
Just like,
100 times, out of 101 times, 99 times out of 100, I've gone through this process and
yeah,
we've shifted that connection." And then you're running towards that conclusion, like, "No, this is a cul-de-sac." And then, so you find yourself, but what's what I try and say? So just being aware of that is go, okay, so I'm good, but I'm not perfect.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's okay. That's okay, because our jobs are not to change people. They're to give people the opportunity
correct.
to take something away that will add value to their day. And ultimately, that's a choice. And not everybody is equipped or comfortable to make those
No,
choices. And that's also okay.
yeah,
It's kind of how it's going to be.
yeah. And I mean, from a coaching perspective, really, we are like really honoring the power of the pause.
Absolutely. So a good example is the difference between talking to your children and talking to your parents.
Mm.
because you just have to love your parents for how they are.
Yeah, because you know you're not going to change them. So
They
that's that. And that's not the hierarchy. That's, I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah.
So, Sarah, what's the best advice you've ever received and who gave it to you?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. So the first thing that comes into my mind is in the early stages of my role play company, I was partnered with somebody who'd worked in corporate marketing, and we were discussing an idea, and I got really defensive about something. I can't remember what it was. And he said,
Mm,
Sarah, so for God's sake, stop being so defensive. And I was like, oh my God, yes, I am being really, like, why am I being
yeah,
defensive?
yeah,
And it was just so helpful. And I thought, and we got on really, really well. And so there was a definite, and it took me a while to kind of turn around and go, thank you for saying
yeah.
it, because you're processing it. But it was just being that direct, it kind of, it was really helpful for me,
Mm,
in conversations, switching being defensive to being curious at times when you find yourself being defensive.
mm,
And
mm.
when other people are being defensive, offering curiosity can then help that person shift. So that was really, really powerful. And the antithesis of that at a similar time is, you get these business coaches that get funded and rock up to your business, and they've usually been in the corporate world for quite a long time. And
Yeah,
they're predominantly male. And this guy said, oh, Sarah, I need to have a word with you. And I was like, oh, yeah. And he said, because my business partner at the time was male, and he said, people find women like you quite difficult to handle. So you may want to kind of, tone it down a bit. I was just like, oh my God, this is who you really are. This is, and, yeah. And that would have been something he'd said before,
yeah, for sure.
you just
Yeah.
absolutely, and I just looked at him and, oh, okay, this is
So,
how,
who specifically finds me hard to handle?
yeah, yeah. Well, I knew, I knew what the situation was, but it was just really interesting, because you could take that as, I'm hard to handle. And I know I'm assertive in many situations, and I'm okay with that, But
Yeah.
you can get the message that it isn't okay, and as we know, the way men and women are labelled in life,
Mm,
when it comes to, sexual behavior, when it comes to career behavior, when it comes to communication, the research is very clear that women get negatively labeled when they're assertive, etc. But to experience it was just like winding the dial back to the 60s or whatever.
mm.
And I was like, oh, okay. So, it made me even more determined.
I
I was
wasn't
like,
going to say it, but that was exactly what I thought, to be honest.
oh, you think that's difficult? Let me. So, yeah, and I was like, oh, well, maybe I should just enjoy, instead of worrying about it, instead of that over control. It's
Yeah,
like, you
yeah,
deal with it.
yeah,
You come back to me, and let's have a proper conversation. Let's do it. But
exactly.
yeah, asking very specific questions, um, and trying to get specific answers.
Mm.
The,
For a reason.
for a reason, and it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be. So I think the craft of staying in an executive state as opposed to an emotional state in these situations is something that is also really amazing, simple concept to be aware
Mm,
of.
mm.
And I think particularly if you're menopausal, that can be quite
Yes, cause and effect probably takes on a whole new meaning.
yeah, it's like a sort of it's like the executive emotional state, but you only have two ends of the dial, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Like
I don't
somebody.
know. I was very lucky through
Okay,
menopause.
yeah. So I'm still moving. So, but it's like somebody cuts out the middle bit, like the dial in the middle,
Yeah, yeah.
and
The regulated bit.
the regulator bit's totally gone. So you find yourself going, I'm not, reasoning with yourself. I'm not actually that angry about it. I can't think of a reason to be angry, but I am.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think there are
I think
knowing.
I think the conversation around menopause and things like that, we probably need to come back and do a whole different
Oh,
podcast on that.
completely. No. Move on,
It's
because it's, yeah, absolutely.
that's a whole topic that, talk about different models of the world. I think everybody has very, very
Yeah,
different, experiences through that, but they're real. They're real. We've covered the deep stuff.
Yes.
And now let's have a little bit of fun. I'm going to hit you with some quick fire questions.
Okay.
Don't overthink.
No, I won't.
Just say the first thing that comes to mind. So, what's the worst business or life advice you ever got? I think I may have already heard that.
Yeah, don't be you.
Oh, that was never going to work, was it? So, if you could have lunch with any historical figure, who would it be?
William Shakespeare.
Okay, talk to me.
Well, I've directed over 20 professional touring productions of Shakespeare, and I felt like he was teaching me now. So I just want to know if he's real. And also, he was very funny. So I think actually that it would just be good to kind of check him out.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think you're absolutely right. Love Shakespeare.
Swimming in the sea.
Naked. And
naked, yeah.
If your 30-year-old self had a theme song, what would it be?
Keep on running.
Love it. Love it. And what's one thing you absolutely sucked at in your 30s, but you've pretty much mastered now?
Love.
Nice.
Yeah, love, I think. Well, yeah, maybe you'll have to ask other people.
That's brilliant. I love it. Sarah, that was incredible. I know so many listeners are going to resonate with what we've talked about, with your story and your journey. But before we wrap up, let's just do a quick recap.
Yeah.
What is the single biggest takeaway you want people to remember from this conversation?
Be curious about yourself and others, and be kind to yourself, and only be kind to others if you feel the need to be.
I love that. And thank you, Sarah. And for everyone listening, here's my challenge to you. Take one thing from today's episode and apply it to your life this week. Maybe it's reaching out to someone who can mentor you. Maybe it's finally taking that leap you've been scared of. Whatever it is, take action. And as we've talked about today, even if that action is actually scheduling in time to rest. If this episode inspired you, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you have a question or a topic you want me to cover in a future episode, send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in to What I Wish I Knew at 30. Remember, the best chapters are still ahead. See you next time.
Thanks, Fran.